Okay, gotta get used to this. Um, Hi everyone. So I'm all about pushing boundaries, and my topic today is really unity in diversity. Um, my name is Jeff, of course, and I actually am a third generation Hong Konger. My grandpa came in the 1960s, worked in a hotel called Furama Hotel. You guys are probably too young to remember. Just like many old things in Hong Kong, it's demolished. At that time, it was the only revolving restaurant in Hong Kong. Then my dad came in the 70s, and then my mom in the 80s. My sister and I are born and raised here. People used to ask me, like, "Hung Ha Hai Bin," and I always say, "Hung Hai To Guan Wan," which means my village or my hometown is To Guan Wan. But you know, as much as I say Hung Ha is To Guan Wan, is a lot of people still look at me and say, "No, really, where are you from?" And I got that a lot growing up, even playing football. You know, that's when I really realized that my color makes a huge difference, and not in a great way. So just to give you an example of this was in the 90s when I first played for the local Kowloon City district team. There was a thing called the McDonald's Ching Fan Lin, McDonald's football youth scheme, and I would go to the football association, and I would be excited, and I would go, and they would give me the form in Cantonese. Now, I really love football so much, but I can't read and write Cantonese. So what would I do? I would go down to my Hon Gan Suk Suk, my security guard, and say, "Asok Pong Yet Chai team." And he would fill it up with me, and I would go, and that's how I got to play football. But, you know, being a young kid, you would start to understand, like, okay, Hong Kong is really not as diverse as you would think. And that also started to see in schools. So when I went to primary school, it was really weird. In the morning, it was all in the morning, it was all the local Chinese, and then at 12:30, it was like an assembly line of a factory. Ethnic minorities would go in. And I was like, okay, you know what, this is just the way it is. Then I moved to secondary school. This is a school called Delia Hip Wo. And at that time, it was different floors, not morning or afternoon, but different floors. Upper floors were all locals, and then the lower floors were all ethnic minorities. So I was just like, okay, you know what, this is just the way it is. But slowly I started to see also during the Form 5s, at that time you did the public exams, and many of our minorities were not going through because, again, they needed 2 languages. And at that time in Delia, we learned English, and anyone here want to take a guess what was my second language? French, yes, that's right. Till today I only know one sentence, "Je ne sais pas français," which means I don't know French. So it was really tough. So many of my minority friends at Form 3 would already start dropping out. Some of them would join their father's businesses, or they would go into construction, security, or even worse, gangs. And I could tell you why people always say, "Oh, ethnic minorities always being gangsters." And I would tell you one thing, because when I got my CE results, Form 5, I remember everyone going in, and mine was really horrible. And you know, now I can see there's a lot of guidance counselors, there's this and that, there's a plan B, there's another pathway. Back in the day, none of it. I can tell you who was waiting outside of schools. It was gang leaders, triad members, openly recruiting ethnic minorities without any requirements. No language needed. Very well done, come on in. And I was thinking, okay. And unfortunately, it was another pathway for many of us. And myself included, I started to really, I know many of the photos don't look like me, but it's me. But yes, you know, I struggled. I really, really struggled going into gang life. This is not what I wanted to do, but that was where I felt accepted. And many of my fellow friends started to rebel against society. Drugs was prevalent, unemployment was prevalent, dependent on CSSA, and that was ethnic minorities back in the day. Until one day I got arrested. I'll never forget, Wan Chai Police, I was there. You know, talk about racial profiling, I can tell you very well, whenever I see a police officer, I get my ID ready, because I know I'm going to get stopped and searched. And anyway, I was arrested, big trouble. As an ethnic minority, you know, when you get arrested for the first time, you usually have a criminal record, and that, you know, it's tough already. So for me, I was very lucky. 2 women came into my rescue. One is my mom, Nirmala Andrews, and another one is a social worker named Fermi Wong, who me and many of my community members have been ignoring for years. You know, we always thought social workers, all they want to do is just make you members and then, you know, get you part of their NGO, and that's about it. Anyway, she bailed me out. I was very lucky. Somehow the judge gave me a bind over, which means I don't have a criminal record. And then my mom found me a job in an NGO. which is where I'm still working for 14 years on. And then Fermi Wang also said, hey Jeff, you know what? You can't just keep walking in this path. Why don't you study to be a social worker? You're really good at your job, you're passionate. And at that time, there was no ethnic minorities allowed to study in the social work program, by the way, just because you needed to read and write Cantonese. But Fermi Wang never took no for an answer. She fought institutions, and finally one of them allowed me and 2 others to be a test case. And that's the first time in my life that I actually studied with local Chinese in one classroom. And it was difficult, 4 challenging years, but I must say that really helped me with my Cantonese and me feeling like, hey, I am a Hong Konger, and this is what Hong Kong should be, not separated, not segregated, isolated studying. Anyway, in 2014, I became Hong Kong's first ethnic minority registered social worker. Again, just like Michael said, don't clap. But again, anyone want to know how many ethnic minority social workers there are today? 1? Oh no, thank God, no. 23 of us, and many more. So that's a big one. That you got to clap for, because that's an incredible thing. So I slowly found I have a purpose. I now need to start using my experience, my voice, and my platform to build bridges and strive for unity and diversity. But it's not been an easy battle, I can tell you that. If you Google my name, you'll always see me criticizing government policies, always being in trouble, always being in the forefront of things. So I didn't just finally found my place. No, it had to be in lots of ups and downs. And that ups and down brought me to Chungking Mansions. That's the job where I work for. Now, whenever I say Chungking Mansions, Chongqing Daiha, yeah, I know there's a lot of feelings. There's never something like very straightforward with Chungking Mansions, because just like many ethnic minorities, we first of all didn't like the image of Chungking because that portrayed ethnic minorities as criminals and all sorts. So I was struggling when I first joined in this place, made famous by Chongqing Samlam, right? The movie Chungking Express, which showed it as a lawless place and just made it even more world famous because of, it won several awards. But of course, my dear friend, Professor Gordon Matthews from CUHK wrote a more kind of reflective, true day-to-day of what Chungking is. And it's a great book called Ghetto in the Center of the World. Please read that. But also what's the problem with Chungking is every day it's raided. Even yesterday as I was leaving at 6 o'clock, 200 police officers raiding, checking IDs, bringing their dogs and all sorts, and I'm just like, wow, this place is just an easy target, media, society biases, the news magnifying things when it happens there, and also in effect, in a way, targeting ethnic minorities, right? Because where can you make an image of brown, black, yellow, or whatever folks is Chungking Mansions and make it bad and make it sound horrible? But also people don't realize it is one of the most beautiful cultural melting pots in the world. There is no other place like this. I mean, in the US you have Chinatown. In Singapore you have Little India. In other places you have, where small communities congregate. But there's no other place in the world that can have more than 70 different nationalities, different religious groups, all side by side in one little building. And I think that is something that in Hong Kong we're not taking more ownership and pride for. But anyway, for me as well, coming into that building, I can tell you the first year, I was so ashamed to tell people I worked in Chungking. People say, where do you work? I say, oh, Christian Action, just an NGO. And I would never tell them because, I felt shame. There was so much stigma within my own community, right? Because even my own mom and dad, my relatives, or even the Indian community would say, don't let your children go past Chungking Mansions because there's, people always at the door, at the entrance, disturbing and all sorts. But what also taught me about this building, it was so symbolic to who I was, to who many ethnic minority was. The building represented my journey. People didn't understand me, misinterpreted me. The building, the same thing. So for me, I started to, slowly build my love for this building, to see the beautiful diversity of this place, and I slowly started to be that voice there. Lots of fantastic media representation. Now, if you look at media, there's always, certain medias that are very good at putting us ethnic minorities number one in the wrong way. So what we started to do was to own the narrative. To own the narrative, that's so important. I'm so proud nowadays you have so many social media influencers. What are they doing? They're owning the narrative. Now there's so many ethnic minority influencers. You got Michael here just now doing an amazing thing in his profession, owning the narrative. And that's what I started to do for my community, for Chungking Mansions, for the refugees as well. I did all the good hard work, and then sadly 2019, everyone remember, horrible time, challenging time, whatever feelings you may feel. And of course, during the social unrest, things were going crazy. People were putting stuff on social media. And then there was an incident in North Point where people were fighting between different ethnic Chinese groups. And suddenly, one fine day in October, one of the big famous activists was beaten up, named Jimmy Shum. And guess what? They blamed it on ethnic minorities without real proof. Then the next day on this social media platform, they put down, let's go attack the mosque, let's go attack ethnic minorities, let's go attack Chungking mansions. Now this was really serious because we were thinking, hey, we saw what happened weeks ago in North Point, this can happen. And imagine this huge racial conflict outside the mosque or inside the mosque, unthinkable. Many of my friends and businesses in Chungking mansions started to pack their goods and look for storages. They were freaking out because, this was a time in Hong Kong of chaos, and really we didn't know what was going to happen. So anyway, a couple of my friends we decided we can't let this happen. This is not the Hong Kong that we grew up in. No way. So we decided, we put up a Facebook post and social media post and said, we're instead going to be peaceful ambassadors of Chungking and show you our beautiful ethnic hospitality. And we put that out there, taking a huge risk. I remember getting calls from my own boss saying, you could get fired for this. This is like, you're taking a huge risk. But anyway, we decided to just go ahead, have faith in Hong Kong. And I'll never forget, this was the image of that moment on October 20th, Sunday, outside of Chungking Mansions now. It was just, for me, a watershed moment, just people coming in and instead of attacking us or saying really horrible stuff, they were hugging us. They were taking our water bottles. They were saying thank you for diffusing the situation. I'll never forget my good friend Dixon from Ghana. He was telling me, Jeff, 2 hours ago, nobody was sitting next to me in the bus getting to Chungking, and today they're hugging me left, right, and center. And I said, this is Hong Kong for you, right? You just gotta keep doing that good step forward, and people will change perceptions. And I can never forget that. Those 4 or 5 hours was the most beautiful moment of Hong Kong. In a very complex time, I saw the beautiful face of Hong Kong people. Anyway, it was so well received on social media and all sorts. Many of the public were calling us. So we decided, because people wanted to know what was beyond those people standing there. They wanted to go into the building. But I always felt if you just go into the building, you're going to get lost if you don't really know what you want in there. So we decided, let's organize the first ever public tour. So we put it up on social media, and I said, okay, we'll have 2 tour guides, myself and another friend. We'll start at 5:30, 80 people expected. But at 4:30, my friend called me and says, Jeff, you need to come down now. I said, why, what's going on? He says, sorry, really having trouble with this. The lines are going out all the way to Sheraton Hotel. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is just the first batch. What are we going to do? So in the end, I had to call many of my other friends who were supposed to be just kind of volunteers outside to welcome people. They ended up being unofficial tour guides. And I can tell you, that day, it was also Diwali, which was the Indian Festival of Light. So it was such a festive atmosphere in Chungking. I'll never forget these moments. Elderly people coming in, children with their moms and dads coming in, just coming in and seeing the beautiful race, religion, food, history, culture of us, unthinkable. 15, 20 years ago, this would not have happened. But just to see people coming in, wanting to understand who are these people that stood outside Chungking Mansions? Why did we have such misconception about this place? Anyway, it was so well received by the media and the public, which was really great to see finally some positivity on Chungking Mansions. Because if you Google Chungking Mansions, there's always going to be a lot more negative on it. Maybe a lot better these few years. It was really embraced. And I still do tours today. I don't enjoy being a manager of a center. I enjoy being a tour guide. So whenever there are tours, I just drop everything and I go down and do a tour. I think some of our folks here were just telling me from CUHK that joined my tour and they really enjoyed it. The most fun I have is the elderly group. People say they're the hardest to change, they're the most racist. I can tell you that's not true. Usually by the end of the tour, I leave people at the entrance and saying, you enjoy the elderly group are the ones who always say, and then 2 hours in, they're still there hanging out and bringing their beautiful small view cams to do footages inside, so really incredible. So as I said, I worked in this beautiful center for refugees, something that I wasn't so proud of. It was a really rundown place, but it was a place that finally I bring some highlight into refugees, because every time I say I work for refugees, they say, Jeff, you help Galan, man. You're always helping fake refugees. And I'm like, no, guys, you really don't know. There are genuine people who are fleeing and need the protection of Hong Kong. And so I'm really lucky through my role there. I started to incorporate all these packages, the tours, to talk about race, religion, culture, food, history, belonging, because people will look at me and say, oh, Jeff, you're a refugee too? I'm like, no, guys. So having to explain the different dynamics of Hong Kong's community. So yeah, what I do is now I have people come up and have dialogue with our refugees, giving them back representation. Very important. Don't just let someone read a media interview or media highlight and think, oh, they're all fake refugees. No, giving my clients the voice, and it's so important. And how do we do that? Several ways. I bring them to their religious institutions. How important. People love walking by the mosque and say, wow, Ho Lang. But they keep asking me, can we go in? Is it free? And I'm like, guys, how crazy are you asking me such basic questions? No, it's free, of course. Go on in, and it's the most welcoming places. So we start running tours to the Sikh temple, the Hindu temple, the mosques, the churches, letting people know that it's a very welcoming place and what these religions are. Because people confuse Hinduism, Sikhism, and Islam. It's three beautiful different religions. If you go to the Sikh temple, by the way, there is something called langar, free meals. Every Sikh temple in the world offers that. If you go during Ramadan, the Muslim fasting month of fasting, it's wonderful. They have this thing called where they have where you break fast together at 7 o'clock, and it's such a communal thing. People who are having meals, if you're just passing by, they'll offer a meal for you as well, because that's what it is all about. So people don't realize in Hong Kong how approachable these people are, how approachable these religions are. And then food. Hong Kong people never say no to food. So that's one thing I've started to use in our center, is our refugees come from different parts of the world. Rwanda, Congo, Yemen, Egypt, Djibouti, you name it, and they have these foods and Hong Kong restaurants don't have. And we're using them to connect. While they also teach you how to cook, eat, we're sharing those stories and those interactions, and those are so important. So we call this now the kitchen away from home. It's a kitchen away from home for our refugee clients, but it's also a kitchen away from home for the participants. And then we started this thing called Human Library, a great concept from Denmark, where I or my clients or any ethnic minorities become the book. They share their experiences on discrimination, or they share their experiences on why they fled their religion, their countries on religious persecution, racial warfare, or some of them, my clients are from the LGBTQ community. In their countries it's illegal. Or some of my clients are political refugees who fled because they were journalists, and overnight their lives turned upside down. So that's important, so that people stop reading on the internet or one-off news articles that are not true. Unfortunately, 2020, we had a horrible fire, and unbelievably, just after the social unrest, as the pandemic was starting, we do not get any government funding in my center, and I was just thinking, what are we going to do? But you know what, in Hong Kong, it's really an incredible thing. At your lowest point, at your lowest zero, that's when the Hong Kong people come in solidarity. And I'll never forget, for 2 months, we were like, what are we going to do? Should we just fundraise for the burnt unit, which was $800,000? We just said, let's just go low. But in 2 months, we got $2.4 million. And a lot of the local people were the ones calling me left, right, and center and just saying, hey, here's for your center, here's for your community, and we support what you guys do, and it's so important to have a center like this in Chongqing. $2.4 million. If you told me 10 years ago, let's fundraise for a center in Chongqing for a refugee center, I'll be saying, forget about it. Let's just forget about it. But it just shows you what Hong Kong has changed to become right now. And now, beautifully, we've rebuilt, relaunched, and refreshed our center. Now it looks so posh, people think we're so rich. Actually, we're not. But it's just wonderful. We like to call ourselves a home away from home. It's a home away from home for many of our community, refugee community, but it's also a home away from home for the local public to come up and to find that. So much that during the World Cup, we had 50 people squished there watching the beautiful game, and that's what we love in our center. It's a mini United Nations. So yeah, I've been through many zeros to ones. This is my life. It's just an up and down battle constantly, and it is what it is. But I'd like to have 3 things for you guys to just take away from me. is change. You know, be the change you want to see in the world is so crucial, because in this society that we're living in, not enough people are taking ownership. Not enough people are doing change making, and I think that's crucial. Challenge, take every challenge as an opportunity for growth. Truly, I've grown also in size, but I've also grown in maturity, but also grown with more leadership. And leadership does not mean I take the lead all the time. It's also allowing my peers, my allies to also lead with me. Very crucial. Courage, really finding strength in adversity. Guys, I mean, very honestly, Hong Kong, what we've been through in the last 3 years, we are the most resilient city in the world. Nobody can take that role from us, because we've gone from unrest to pandemic to where we are today, and we're still finding our feet, but we're still here. And I think that's what I also wanted to challenge you, is the unity and diversity. Diversity does not only mean, of course it means the LGBTQ community. Yes, of course it means the disability community. It means many more, but it also means the racial community, the ethnic community. And please, I hope that when you meet an ethnic minority, you also understand there's a lot of struggle. It's not an equal pathway in Hong Kong. So please, I hope that you have more allyship with us as well. And with that, I would also love for you to come to Chungking and have a nice curry with me. Thank you very much.